Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
Most people's lives could be considered unremarkable, aside for one or two defining moments where people find out who they really are.
Which way are the Irish ferries, mate? The search is over.
You didn't want me to do that, didn't you?
Ten. Oh, I don't know the call for this. There's been a terrorist incident.
A what?
They were speaking their own language. They weren't speaking in English.
You don't think they could have been speaking Welsh?
This gentleman been sent by a crime family who are intent on taking over your turf.
Hand over your takings. How much is it?
£1.20.
Oh, come on.
We usually encourage tourists to stick to sightseeing.
Anything unusual today? Do you have anything to chop him up with?
Nothing out of the obvious.
What can anyone tell me about our friend in the toll booth? No one will tell the truth when it comes to you. I want to know why.
I done a terrible thing a long time ago. Somebody's gonna have to pay for it.
Shit just got dark, boy.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 359. Releasing in select Australian cinemas on the 29th of July is The Toll, a crime comedy that stars Michael Smiley as a lonely toll booth operator whose dark past quickly catches up to him. A Wales shot and set urban western that is violent, funny, and clever with equal measure. The Toll also marks the feature film debut of Ryan Andrew HOOPER, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Ryan, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Matthew.
So you are the director of The Toll, and your screenwriter on this is Matt Red. And you two have collaborated for quite some time on numerous projects, shorts, and etc. The origins of The Toll, though, that goes back to, say, from what I've read in my research, 2013 to 2014. And from what I gather, you guys were thinking about doing a feature. And the question was, what movie would you two want to watch at the cinema on a Friday night? And The Toll is pretty much the result of that. What was it about the story of The Toll, especially in regards to, I guess, making a urban western in Wales that really appealed to you, not only as a filmmaker, but a film fan, that you would want to watch that film on a Friday night around the corner in the cinema from your place?
I think that's a good question. I think what it was for us was that when we sort of started out thinking about how we were what sort of film we were gonna make, there's like a I don't know, let me think of. There's like we kind of drilled it down to the core of what it is that would make us part of our money to sort of want to go to the cinema to watch it. And that was the idea, was it was always going to be a cinema project. And so what is it that's going to, because streaming is so prevalent and easy, and obviously, you know, with the lockdowns that everyone's been having, it's boom. So it's like, what is it that's going to make us think, oh, I'd like to sort of pay money to sit in a room with a bunch of people who I don't know in the dark and watch something on screen. So we just thought about the films that we loved, the types of films that we loved, and you know, between the pair of us is pretty diverse. So that kind of became the core of what it is that we were going to do. It's like, well, let's be ambitious. Let's kind of try and swing for the rafters a little bit. And that was sort of what we attempted with The Toll, was that the budget was very, very small, and it's made as part of a scheme in Wales called Cinematic, which is a fully funded. The films become fully funded, So in some respects, it's good because it's a go project. So you're more likely to get yeses from cast and crew because, they're not waiting for a financial package to be constructed. It's just like, right, we've got a date, we're shooting, boom, we can get a cast and crew. So, but what the kind of prevailing wisdom is when you've got like no money, no time, blah, 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 is sort of very limited cast, maybe one or two casts, very small contained locations, small contained story. And we just thought, I thought, well, screw it. I might never make another one. I think it's something the figures of first-time filmmakers making a second one is terrible. It's like 90% never make another one. So I thought, right, this might be the last one we ever make. So let's just go for it. Let's just go nuts. Let's go for good a cast as we could possibly get. Let's go for big, big wide vistas. Really use the location of Wales as our added production value. Let's have cars and guns and animals and all the stuff you're not supposed to do. But then drill it into a small contained sort of story. It's not a. Well, I think one of the big touchstones for us was sort of like Calvary, The Guard, Fargo. I think it's pretty obvious if you watch the films that we love. And Fargo is if you think what the actual core of the story is, it's so fun. If his father-in-law had just said, yes, I'll give you some money to buy the car park or whatever, it wouldn't have been a thing. It wouldn't have. It's a tiny little story really, but one of the greatest films ever made probably. So that was the kind of the thought process behind it was, let's be ambitious because we might never do it again. And I'd never heard of a West Walian Western. So I thought, I love Westerns. It is kind of the medium that cinema is best at, I think. If you think of things like John Ford and, there's so many lists of them. And so, yeah, that was kind of the idea behind it really, was let's just swing for the rafters. And, we know we were going to fail in some respects, or it was going to look a bit creaky, but we were hoping that people would be able to understand the intention behind it.
Well, an interesting thing that happened while you and Matt were putting together the idea for the film was that you actually made a short based on the premise. The initial premise of the toll is set in the short. And the short's called Ambition. That was released in 2019. When you put Ambition together and you put it on the screen, is that sort of like a litmus test as to what you have in script form so far? When you see something on screen, your idea up there, does that give you an idea what works, what doesn't? Do we add more characters? Do we take some away? Because usually when I talk to filmmakers, especially independent filmmakers, it's the other way around. The short comes first and then they build upon the feature afterwards. But you guys were already developing the feature when Ambition had come out.
Yeah, that's true. You were one of probably the first journalist who I've spoken to who's clocked that. And most people think it was sort of the other way around, but the feature came first. And what happened was in the UK, as well as the cinematic scheme, there's also a scheme called the Beacons, which was a short film, fully funded short film scheme. And we thought, let's, we know we're going to go for cinematic. Let's use the Beacons as a proof of concept. And we had to have a discussion then about, right, do we do the first 10 pages of the feature, or do we do a film, like a short film just within that world? And I was not a fan of the idea of doing the sort of first 10 pages. I think I'd seen The Babadook, and there was a short film that I think was the precursor to that. But the actual story in the short film was self-contained in and of itself and had a lot of elements of the feature. Yeah. And I sort of preferred that approach. So, what came from the short was, it's very different to the feature. It's sort of, it's kind of weird. The short is quite surreal. Like we shot in a studio we shot in Pinewood Studios, which sounds very Pinewood Studios in Wales at the time. It's not called that anymore, but sounds very sort of flash, but we ended up we didn't shoot in a studio. We ended up shooting in kind of like one of the side buildings that is basically a glorified shed. So like the sound was terrible because like it had like crinkly sort of roof tile or something in the ceiling, which is sort of like if there's ever any rain, you would hear it. Which is a nightmare for the sound guys. But it added a completely different feel to it because we had to get a load of drapes and black everything out, and it became very because we couldn't fake a background. It had to be shot at night primarily, and I think what it did for us was kind of it created an understanding of how well the triplets worked, because the triplets are in the short.
Yes.
And was a good test of how to film, one actor playing three parts, and then we were very lo-fi, we didn't use, I'm not a huge fan of CGI and that sort of thing. I wouldn't have it at all if I could get away with it. So it was like, let's go back to old school kind of techniques of, stand-ins and things like that. And there's one of the reasons why they wear masks.
Yes.
So that worked quite well. And then also an understanding that the lead actor had to be somebody compelling who could hold, could hold that character. So in the show, it's Simon Russell Beale, who is, possibly the greatest theatre actor of all time. It was completely bonkers that he agreed to do it. We so literally couldn't believe it when he agreed to do it. But I think when it came to the feature, it was like another thing is like, right, you need this lead character to be someone who is compelling presence on screen. And then there was the Western element to it. There was a man in black kind of character who was the bag man, and he comes out of the mist. And we had a slightly surreal character as the jogger who pays the toll. The only person who actually does pay the toll in at all. Usually people just walk through. He's actually the only character who ends up paying. So the key elements were in it, and then that kind of set the stage then for how we would approach the feature. And it's like, well, we can do this. It works. The Western feel works. And apologies if you could hear my daughter in the background. And yeah, that was kind of that was kind of what we used the show for, really. And we had a little bit of success with it, and what have you. But it worked really well then when we went into the actual interviews to have, to kind of try and secure the funding, is that then I could present. Me and Matt put a lot of effort into how we pitch things, and we could present then I cut a trailer, basically sort of sat down, watched about 1 billion trailers, learned some of the little techniques and stuff they use to kind of create as awesome a trailer as you possibly can. And with the limited amount of footage we had from the show, to try to cut something together that would be, visually striking enough to kind of convince the people people handing out the money that we could do it. And this is sort of how the film would look.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by 80s Tees. 80s Tees is an online retailer of licensed t-shirts and pop culture gear from your favorite movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, comic books, and musicians. Celebrate your inner 80s nerd and click on the link in the show notes below to get the raddest retro t-shirts delivered to your door. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Loot Crate. Founded in 2012, Loot Crate is the worldwide leader in fan subscription boxes. Loot Crate partners with industry leaders in entertainment, gaming, sports, and pop culture to deliver monthly themed crates, produce interactive experiences in digital content, and film original video productions. No matter what you geek out about, Loot Crate has a subscription box for you. To get your very own exclusive collectibles, apparel, and gear delivered to your door, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is also brought to you by Vudu. Watch the latest movies and TV shows anytime, anywhere. No subscriptions, no contract. Enjoy stunning quality in up to 4K ultra high definition at home, and download and watch on your mobile device as well. To rent and buy from over 100,000 titles or watch thousands of movies free with Vudu Movies on us, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. Now, back to the show. Your toll booth operator in the film is played by Michael Smiley, and the character himself has such a great poker face. You don't know what cards he's holding, and you really need that actor to really bring that to life. And I thought that Michael did a terrific job in it. From what I understand, I think this might perhaps be his first lead in the movie, because I don't think the other things I've seen him in, like Kill List, which is absolutely terrific in as well. He's been always playing the supporting actor. But this being his first lead, and I know you're a big fan of the show Spaced, and Maddie's as well. I'm sure securing him, number one, is like great for the role, because he plays it to a T. But also, I'd imagine with you being an independent production, grabbing someone like Michael Smiley would have opened up the gates to get even more cast onto the film, because a lot of times when it comes to indie productions, you need that name to sign on to be able to get more people involved.
Yeah, Michael actually ended up being one of the later cast, actually. But
really?
he did well. Like, we were initially sort of working with Simon, and he was going to do it, but then he had this crazy sort of scheduling conflict. So then he dropped out, and it suddenly became such an important role. We had to start thinking about, I had to start thinking about, who are we going to be able to get to replace, like I said, somebody who makes his living by literally captivating an audience. He is, that's his background, is that, he's used to being on stage and having to hold an audience, and his skill set is self-evident. So who are we going to be able to find that can be the equivalent? So I thought, well, we're not going to find someone exactly the same as Simon, so let's broaden it out. And with Michael, it was trying to work, that's a tough role, and it's a tough pool of actors to kind of cast from, because guys Michael's age who are male are quite used to being leads and are in demand. So it's a tough pool to kind of cast out. It's the most difficult one, probably. So we had to try and find someone who we thought could pull it off. And with Michael, it was like, I always held him in huge esteem, to be honest with you. And I was amazed when we talked about this. And again, you're right to your research. This is his first time that he was sort of number one on the call sheet. He told me that. I couldn't believe it. It was like, that is like, seems mental that this is his first lead. I thought, how am I have to find someone who can sit in a room silently looking out a window and you'd want to watch it. And I think if you think about his role in his versatility as an actor, I don't know if there's anyone quite the same. Because think about his role in Kill List, and then he's in the TV series Luther, for example, and then his character in Spaced. It's just so eclectic, but I think he's pretty much flawless in everything I've ever seen him in. And I always felt like massively underutilized. Like he's not when they play the supporting characters, I'm always, I used to think, well, maybe he's not used as much as he should be. So, but he's also got an edge, Michael, and I think it comes from, because he's from Northern Ireland, and like I've been to Northern Ireland, and like it's still like as a cohort of people, they are absolutely lovely, but there is an edge there because there is a past.
Yes.
And that, whether they realize it or not, that kind of does stem through. And I thought he can maybe do something with a look, which would mean I can cut a load of dialogue, which is your dream as an actor, as a director, sorry. Awful for a writer, but as directors, like if I can just get away with Michael conveying a story point or a character point or a tone shift just from a look, I know he can do it because I've seen him do it. And he did. He was sort of a joy to work with. And also, from a part, our relationship is like watching him, sitting down looking at your monitor, and it's as you can imagine, low budget. It's winter in Wales. We're on the very edge of coast, which gets all of the weather first from coming up from like the Atlantic. So it's always raining, and it's like sort of almost got its own microclimate of just being horrible, really. So like all that stuff's going on, and then you sit down and look at the monitor, and then you just see Michael do his stuff, and you think, okay, it's working. You know? Like this, for example, some of the stuff with him in the booth when it's nighttime. I don't. Well, maybe he was trying to release what the weather was like, but it was literally raining sideways. It was like bucketing down with rain. The booth was shaking. It was insane. It was an insane situation to film in. And Michael you would never be able to tell. You know, when I see that scene, that's all I can see is the weather. So I know, it would be the Welsh weather trying to blow us off the edge of a cliff. But his sort of serenity, and then that tiny bit of like edge, is what that character needed. And yeah, I mean, like it was working. I mean, I think I didn't realize how beloved he is. Like,
yeah.
I just always thought he was a really good actor, but like people love him, like really, really love him. So we've kind of been able to ride on his coattails. But actually, sorry, I've waffled on. Going back to the beginning of the question, for example, he did bring his credibility. He did bring cast. For example, he brought Iwan Rheon in because Iwan's partner was a huge fan of space. He just had a child, and we were like, when we were filming, we were staying in a holiday camp basically, and he's like, well, just bring the family down, we'll get you a cottage, and you can come down with your partner and your child, and but it was that nudge from his partner to say, Smiley, you've got to work with it, so yeah, that was, he definitely brought Iwan Rheon in. I'm hoping he went like the script, but I think it's mainly because it was Michael, to be honest with him.
What I love about the toll booth character is that he's so unassuming. There's a mystery to him, and it's alluded to that he has a past, and we all know that there's a past there, but you never once hint as to what that past is. And I love that about the character, because I think sometimes filmmakers might be tempted to maybe do a flashback sequence or maybe a monologue or something, but in this film you don't have that, and I love that about him, because it just adds more mystery and makes the character so much more intimidating as well. When it comes to that past of that character, though, does Michael like to have some type of background story? Does he develop his own, or does he not work in that way?
I've got my own ideas about what it is that his past is, and I've spoken to Michael about that. He may have his own. He's a strong-willed guy. Like he doesn't necessarily need to listen to me, but I've told him what I think the backstory is, and I think the reason we didn't allude to it is because it wasn't important.
Yeah.
Like if you think about the opening to Good, the Bad, the Ugly, when sort of Lee Van Cleef turns up at the homestead out of nowhere, sort of thing. Like it doesn't matter what the reason that he's there, really. Like, but that is something that I was sort of like interested in. Was like, well, we talked about what the backstory could be and what, and I thought, well, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the specific reason is behind it. And it's more interesting that it's more interesting if you don't know. And I think Matt and I sort of were both big fans of The Dark Knight, and I think trying to work out being nerdy filmmakers, or when I heard The Dark Knight was being made with Nolan, and he was talking about having the Joker in it, I thought, I was like, how would you make the Joker not, caricature character? How would you make his Nolan stuff is, not realist, obviously, but it's a bit more embedded in the real world rather than cartoony? It's like, what would that backstory be? And I remember thinking to myself, I'll come up with one. And I came up with this backstory that, his father was abusive, and that the scars on his face were things that he cut into his cheeks. And that ended up being in the film. But then also there was a load of other stuff he made up.
Yeah.
He made up a load of other rubbish, and I thought, he told everybody different stories. I was like, that is way more interesting, because it reveals more about that character than it does you knowing what the backstory is. You know, him being capricious and, you know, making up rubbish and telling lies and manipulating people is like, that's more important than actually knowing what the true story is. I thought with Michael's character, or with Tollbooth, it was like actually him hoarding information. That is his currency. That was his currency in a previous life, was his ability to understand and have information that others didn't. And that is how he operates in the toll booth. And that is how that's how he works. And I think one of the things I said to Michael was that to think about was that the toll booth, right, is a destination. It's not a waypoint. You know, it's people only go there because they want to see him. It isn't like what a real toll booth is, which is just something that, you know, it's on the way and you don't pay much attention to. You know, you just pay money and go through. It was like, actually, apart from Elton getting lost, that's the only time people ever get is if they get lost. But if you go to the toll, then you're going to the toll. You're not going somewhere and passing by.
Yeah.
Because he is this man who has this information. He is the center point of that little community. And he does that by having knowledge and knowing when not to reveal that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that he never gives away anything more than he needs to, and he doesn't need to give that information away. So that is, by you know, it isn't like, it wasn't a lazy construct of us thinking like, ooh, let's just be all mysterious. It was thinking about his character, and I think Michael understood that being more important than actually what the backstory is. But no, there is a backstory, and me and Michael did discuss it about what it is. But I think the more important thing was him knowing it's the fact that he doesn't give away that information. That's the important character point. And I think he jumped off from that, and did a great job.
The movie is shot and set in Pembrokeshire, which is like a little village. For people who don't know, it's like a little village. It's in the northern side of Wales. Is that correct?
No, it's a county. Pembrokeshire is a county.
Okay.
And it's in the west Wales, so not so southwest. But if you said southwest, they'd probably be mad at you. It's the west. And
your screenwriter Matt Red, he grew up there, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
And I've heard him describe it as kind of like as the end of the world. It's like you can turn left and you fall off a cliff face or something similar to that. And I also read that you mentioned before filming in winter that you had to deal with the wind and the rain, but you also had to deal with flooding as well, didn't you?
How do you know that? Yeah, we did, yeah. It was not on set, fortunately, but like it's just part of the course living there. But like there was I think probably my favorite story was we were traveling to set, going through some of the tiny lakes, and one of the lanes had flooded, and our location manager was beached. Like his car was there, his hire car was there, and it was up to way above the axle of water, and the car couldn't move. And we were like, oh God. And he got out of the car and just looked at us and just went and waved and said, go on without me. Like he was some sort of fallen soldier. I couldn't stop laughing. And as he did that, his laptop fell into the water.
Oh no.
We never got it back. It disappeared. Boof, it's gone. But yeah, no, the set didn't flood, fortunately. Like unbelievably, the set and the booths and everything kind of survived all of the harshness of where we were. But yeah, it is just the perils of working in West Wales. I think it's why I think a lot of Hollywood movies are shot in Wales, right? Like I think we were one beach over from where they filmed either Robin Hood or Thor or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a reason why they don't stay there that long, because the window to actually sort of get anything before the Welsh Weather tries to beat the crap out of you, it is quite small. So I think we learned. You have a bit of a moan. It's like, oh, why do all these films come to shoot in Wales, and then they're only here for like GVs and B-roll and stuff. You think, this is why we're here for GVs and B-roll, because we literally almost had our actors blown off into sea. So I think if you ended up having Chris Hemsworth blown off into sea, you wouldn't be able to cover the insurance. But,
yet remarkably, when I watched the film, it didn't. Just thinking back about it, I don't seem to remember many scenes where there seemed to be rain and such. In fact, it seemed like a lot of times your cinematographer, Adrian Peckett, who worked with you on Ambition, he seemed to capture the sun quite a bit, actually. It seemed like a very vibrant, you see a lot of the greens and a bit of sun in there as well.
Yeah, it's movie magic. We sort of caught the best bits. I think we had elements, like some of the drone stuff. We were fortunate that we shot it in summer, and I think there was a day when me and Adrian went out together and just shot some bits and bobs with the drone, and there was enough. It's more like the caprice of the Welsh weather as opposed to anything else. It's like it'll go from being quite sunny and nice to then being totally and utterly horrendous. And we were fortunate enough, like for example, my favourite scenes in the film, one of them is when the triplets are in the car and we're in a car alongside, and they've got a gun in the air and they're driving towards the booth, and we sort of shooting into the sun, and it was very Western, and we caught that kind of magic hour. And the same when the Daimler turns up and it's on the horizon and the lights go out.
Mm-hmm.
We were really fortunate that we caught that time. But I think literally just after Heavens opened, I think there is actually a scene as well where the triplets avoid a puddle, I think, which we kind of managed to cut around. But yeah, it's more like just the fact that the Welsh weather has almost got a mind of its own, and will do what he wants to do, and you don't really have much say over it. Yeah.
You talked before about many films, Hollywood productions, for example, filming in Wales. I'm curious though, when it comes to local productions, what's the Wales film industry like? Is this something that's more becoming bigger and burgeoning? Because I have noticed there are a few films coming out from Wales. In fact, one of your leads, Anne Elby, she's going to be in a film called The Feast, which is coming out pretty soon, and that's also a Welsh film as well. Is there a groundswell now of Welsh filmmakers filming in Wales, and are we going to see more product from that country?
I think so. Like The Feast is made in the same scheme as The Toll was, and Roger and Lee have been sort of, kind of staples of the Welsh industry for a while. And I think there's also Prano Bailey Bond done Censor. Gareth Evans, who did The Raid, he's come back. He's come back to Wales and is making havoc with Tom Hardy, who's just gone to Barry Island, which is a very how do you be kind about Barry Island? It's kind of like a quaint. I just want to say it in a nice way. It's like a typical British seaside resort, right? Mm-hmm. And he's turned up there, and people are like, their minds are blown a bit. Tom Hardy has turned up there, but Gareth, because of the success of The Raid, he's got a bit more. And he did Apostle as well here. I think, bits and bobs were here. So yeah, I think that the Welsh Film Agency, or Film Cymru as they're called, we work really closely with them, and they've obviously given us a lot of money recently, right? So I've probably been bribed to say this, but I think they've done a really good job in trying to foster that community. And when I was starting out, we came through. There was like a website called Film Shed, which was like early days of the internet. Was like just a forum really where filmmakers from Wales would talk, and a lot of people from that have gone on and done things. Gareth was on it, and Ryan Andrews, who a few years ago he made Elfie Hopkins, which was another sort of. I had Ray Winton there. That was another like West Walian set film, and there's a load of people from that. Kerry is another one of my mates. Kerry, he made a film called Convenience, and I think the sort of bedrock of it has been set, and now people are carrying on from it. So like Craig Roberts is doing really well, making films and shooting them here as well. And I think that to be fair it's easy to kind of see public bodies and funding bodies, and they say no to more people than they say yes to. There's 100 people that probably say yes to 3 people, and then that means there's a lot of disgruntled people. But I do think, in fairness to them, they've done a really good job of trying to foster that industry here. I think Matthew Vaughn, the guy who did like Kick-Ass and the X-Men films, I think he once said like there is no industry in Britain. And I think when he said that, he was right. I think that what Britain was sort of a little bit of a tax haven because of there's quite generous tax breaks here to shoot here, but it was just sort of fleeting. Industries coming in and out, industry coming in and out and using a tax break to make a bit of money and what have you. But I do think what's happened since is an attempt to try and actually create an industry here. And it's it is really tough to do. But I'd like to think that Wales is trying to punch above it. We're a tiny little country. There's like 3 million of us. So I think we're trying to punch above our weight, and that's been me and Matt were sort of envious of Ireland because they're not that much bigger than Wales really in terms of population, but they really do have a really strong industry based around quintessentially what an Irish film is that travels, that will land with audiences all over the place. And we just thought, well, let's try and do that as well. Let's try and add to the gumbo of film industry in Britain. It's like, let's try and add our own little bit to it. I think the film industry here, the Welsh Film Agency or Film Company, as they call, have done a really good job. And I hope they listen to this podcast and give me more money.
Well, I really hope that if the toll's any indication, I think the film industry in Wales is going to have a bright future, and with filmmakers such as yourself, Ryan, and with Matt as a screenwriter as well. You guys did really great work here with the toll, and for everyone out there listening, it releases 29th of July, select Australian cinemas. Be sure to watch the toll. It's a great crime comedy, really dark, really witty, kept me on my toes through the whole thing. Great performance as well, has a whole kind of urban western to it. Feel to it as well, and it all kind of works so well all together. And Ryan, I just want to say thank you so very much for your time today, and congrats with the film as well. And I can't wait for people to watch this film because I watched it a couple of nights ago and I absolutely loved it. And just want to say again, thank you for your time today and congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much, Matthew. Really appreciate it. Still can't believe it's in Australia. It blows my mind a bit. It's on the other side of the world, but thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.